Good evening, and welcome to At the Table. At the Table with Sheldon K. It's good to see each and every one of you here this evening. For those that are beginning their weekend, happy Friday night. For those that are getting off work, happy rest. For those that function in a Christian world that honors the Sabbath, happy Sabbath. For those that do not, you're looking forward to Sunday. Blessings on your worship day as well. So I just want to welcome everybody to At the Table. For those that are interested, this is our second installment of At the Table. If you would like to see the first installment, you can definitely go to our YouTube page, which is At the Table with Lighthouse. And you can look me up on Facebook and you'll see the video there as well. My Facebook page begins with my name. And so if you're interested in that first video, those are two places that you can find it. You can find it posted on my Facebook page as well as the YouTube page, At the Table with Lighthouse. Lighthouse Counseling and Consulting is my counseling firm. And so we are excited about what we're able to offer the world through this platform. And that's really where this began. We started, if you get a chance to watch the first session in quick review, we talked about fear. And this has been a series about managing our emotions and turning our emotions into assets. And our first installment, we discussed fear and how fear motivates connection with someone or something and evaluates the resources that allows you to manage getting connection. So if you get a chance, take a look at the first installment. We also talked about anxiety and we separated the difference between fear and anxiety. We discovered that fear is the processing of the moment and anxiety is the anticipation of it. So please, when you get some time, take an opportunity to look at the first installment. I want to be clear about a few things tonight. So as we manage emotions, we want to be clear about the fact that a whole being is both cognitive and emotional. To be a balanced individual in this life, you will have emotional experiences and you need to be equipped to process them. Without that processing, as we discovered in our first installment, your emotions will process you. You need to be in charge of your emotions, not your emotions in charge of you. So it's essential to develop tools to manage your emotions. And since God created us to be whole beings, that would suggest that our cognitive ability and our emotional ability are all God-given. And if they're all God-given, then your emotions are God-given, which suggests there is no emotion you are experiencing that you should dismiss. That's not needed. If God gave you the emotion, then the emotion is an asset. So tonight we're talking about anger. Now this is a complicated one. Anger is complicated because it's the only emotion that is a side effect and not the direct experience. You're like, what? What does that mean? Anger is a side effect of an experience and not the direct experience. We gave the example, if you are afraid to fly, you experience fear getting on the plane. Here's what's unique. With anger, if you are upset, frustrated, having a difficult time, uniquely, you are angry about the circumstances, not the experience. It's the side effect. So for example, if you are afraid of dogs and it's because of you being bit by a dog in the past, well, if your neighbor has a dog that barks on a consistent basis when you come out of your house to take a walk or go jog or whatever the case might be, each time that happens, you start to build up frustration and anger about the situation. Oddly enough, you're not mad at the dog. You're mad at the situation because really, you are afraid of dogs. And each time you go out, you are reminded of a fear you have to process. And that constant reminder builds frustration. And that's what you're angry at. You're angry at the situation. You're not angry at the dog. So anger is one of the only emotions that is essentially a side effect and not the direct experience. You're really dealing with something else when you're angry. So tonight, I'm going to start with a story. And it's a personal story, which is something therapists tend to never do in session. But since we're not in session tonight, I'm going to make it personal. I have a near and dear friend. His name is Gino. And I would date myself if I told you how long we've been friends, but he and his wife have been just an absolute joy to my wife and I as we have developed our families and careers throughout our life here in Atlanta. And in the early stages of us living in Atlanta, Gino started doing football and flag football in the community. And he opened up the opportunity for us to play flag football with him and some of his friends from college. And so I joined in, excited to have the opportunity to play football and hang out with my friends. And essentially, that's all I thought, it was about. It was about hanging out with my friends. If we won, we won. If we did, we didn't. Well, now Gino is athletic. He is extremely athletic. And so his goal was to win, which is an appropriate goal. My goal was to hang out. So our record was okay. It wasn't bad, but we weren't the best record in the league, at least not the whole time. We were up there, though, because Gino's friends were all former athletes. So, this little community league that we joined weren't ready for his friends because they were beasts on the field. Like, they could play. And it was no joke when we would get on the field. Everybody thought we were the standard to be measured by. So whenever we played, there would be a little crowd, because they wanted to see us get down, So it was kind of exciting to be a part of that. It was a great opportunity. I got to play a little bit. Everybody picked up pretty quickly that I wasn't the best athlete on the team, but I got to play every now and then. It was cool. But I felt like there were certain things that I could do really well. And so when there were opportunities for that to take place, I wanted to be in the game. A couple of times I was pulled out of the game for reasons that the person, I guess, essentially coaching at the time was thinking it'd be better for someone else to play. Well, I got frustrated with that. I got upset with that. And the truth is that whatever his reasoning was and me not knowing it left me with my own thoughts. It just, by him not sharing that, it left me with my own thoughts. And my own thoughts were all assumptions. Like, I didn't hear him say directly why I wasn't in the game. I just heard I wasn't in the game. I'm going to pause my story right here. This is essential. I want you to understand something. When I first moved to Atlanta, I was searching for a job and I was having trouble getting one. At the time, I didn't have the clarity of purpose that I have now. So I was looking for a job that would feed my family at the time and allow me to do something that was of interest to me. And I really could not find anything. You're like, what in the world? What is he doing? I thought we were talking about flag football. We are. So I started looking for a job and had difficulty finding one. I found jobs here and there that would essentially pay me, but they weren't fulfilling experiences. Not at all. They were jobs. They weren't careers, at least not to me. And they weren't fulfilling, but they were tolerable. Is that what I want? Yes, they were tolerable. So I would get through the job for a little while and then some circumstance would happen and I'd either get laid off, the company would close, or whatever the situation was. I would have to transition again. And I wasn't transitioning in going up. I was really going laterally. Like, my pay wasn't going up. My position in the companies weren't going up. It was really just lateral moves kind of thing. So I was managing and surviving and dealing with the fact that I was unfulfilled as an adult. And it was frustrating. And it was difficult to deal with. And I thought that as an adult, it was my responsibility to provide for my family. And so I focused on the act of providing and let aside the pursuit of fulfillment. Yeah, I'm going somewhere, and some of you have picked it up. So, the more I pursue professional attributes and opportunities to grow in these companies, I still maintained a lateral position. Eventually, I changed professions altogether and thought, at least let me be a part of something bigger than myself. And that helped. But again, I still had not found purpose and fulfillment. I had found adventure, I had found satisfaction, but not fulfillment and purpose. And if any of you know me well, those two things are my most cherished ideals: purpose and fulfillment. And I had not achieved either one. And in my heart, I was hurt. I was hurt because I felt like God had left me hanging. I felt like as much as I prayed and sought the Lord, I should have answers for this. I felt like as much as I have tried to be a good person, he should explain this to me. And the absence of answers built up anger in me. Anger I was not processing. Anger I was not dealing with. Anger I was not honest with myself about. And so I lived life not managing my emotion, anger. And you know what it did? It managed me. So I'm playing flag football and someone pulls me out of the game when I think I am at my best contribution. And they say, look, this person needs to be in right now because they play better. I didn't hear that a more insightful athlete was making a more beneficial decision for the team. You know what I heard? I heard, you're not good enough. And you know where else I hear that? In the mirror. And you know where else I wasn't processing that? In the mirror. I wasn't satisfied as an individual professionally, and it affected me emotionally. It affected me socially. And so in the football game, I heard, you're not good enough. And I got angry. I got really angry. I got so angry, I couldn't go back in the game. I got so angry, I wanted to fight the guy that took me out of the game. I got so angry, I wanted to fight most of the guys on the team. I got so angry that we could not have a decent conversation when the game ended. It was ridiculous. And you know what? All of that anger had nothing to do with the game. It had everything to do with the fact that I wasn't processing what I was truly feeling. And it processed me. I tell that story right now because the first thing you need to understand about anger, as I said, you are not processing your emotional experience, and that builds frustration. And how does it empty itself? How does that pressure relieve itself? Anger. It is a proven, researched fact that most children reveal their state of depression through anger because it's the only emotion they understand. They really don't grasp sadness that well. Sadness has a lot to do with loss. Children don't really grasp sadness that well. Yeah, you see kids that are sad, they cry, all that kind of stuff, but really, they're frustrated. Children don't really process depression. They just get angry. Mainly boys, but boys and girls. And we really never stop doing that unless you learn at some point to process your emotions. Anger. And this is our first definition. The asset of anger is a barrier check. The lesson anger is meant to teach you is to check your barriers. What is inhibiting the desired outcome? That's what anger is meant to teach you. What is inhibiting your desired outcome? And what is the desired outcome? This is where we miss processing anger. Most of us don't even know what we're really angry about. We're so caught up in the moment, we can't process. This is why I told the story, because to manage anger effectively, you've got to begin before you get angry. Yeah. Truthfully, anger is the side effect of what you're dealing with. When I did not face the fact that I felt unfulfilled as an adult, when I ignored that for the sake of paying bills, I left it unchecked in my spirit, and it built, and it needed release. And wherever I felt a barrier, I would let it out in anger. God gave you anger to teach you what is inhibiting your progress. Every one of us face barriers. Barriers really come in tonight two essential ways. Now, there are a lot of things that can be a barrier, a lot. And deciphering all the different kinds of barriers that can appear in your life, that's not really worth the time we have here. What we want to do is focus on the things that have the most influence. Psychological barriers, sociological barriers. Those are the ones that get us the most. Psychological barriers, which is like my story, and sociological barriers. People and experiences we have in association with people that leave us feeling inhibited. These are the barriers that we need to process. And when we get angry, 9 times out of 10, it's one of these two. We are upset with something we felt. We are upset with something we experienced. We are upset with something that passed through us. Shame is a good one. Guilt is a good one. Embarrassment is a good one. And fear is a good one. All of these emotions take control from us, and we feel inhibited. And so we get frustrated. That frustration builds into anger, and then it needs release. And so what do? We go off on the ones we love. We go off on ourselves. But when we go off on ourselves, it's a secret. Yeah. We're really upset with ourselves, but we can't admit that, or we have struggles being honest with ourselves about that. And so it comes out as aggressive driving. It comes out as aggressive play. It comes out as, well, I'm just a moody person, or that's just how I am. That's just how I get down. That's just how I communicate. That's just me. Yeah, that is just you. You unprocessed. We get frustrated with these emotional experiences, and we don't process them. And when we don't process them, they process us. And when it comes out, it's anger. But anger was meant by God to tell you one thing: what's inhibiting you? And I'll add one question to that. How old is it? Sure. How old is it? There is something holding you back, and God wants to bring it to your attention. Why does God want to bring to your attention all of your barriers? Because God only lives in one place, the truth. He's nowhere else. When you're looking for answers, he's only in one place, the truth. And until you are aware of your barriers, you're not living in the truth. which is why anger is so confusing to you and so frequent for you. You've got to figure out, what are your barriers? Now, the only way to know what your barriers are is to know where you're going, to know what you want. To know what you want is to figure out what your ideals are. What are your ideals? What is it that you desire most? And once you have an understanding of what that is, the barriers become clear. And we've got to process them. It's essential. If we don't, whatever is inhibiting us becomes so frustrating, we attempt radical change. And radical change is not always the solution. The way we deal with barriers, 3 options. You got a scalpel, you got people, and you got a bulldozer. That's it. Now, there are different ways to describe those 3 things I just gave you, but essentially that's what they are. You've got a small tool to do very precise work. You've got a group of people to collaborate with, and you've got industrial size equipment to make radical change. These are really the 3 tools we use to remove barriers. And guess what? This is what anger looks like. This is exactly what anger looks like. Anger is precise, intentional, meant to hurt, meant to cause a specific outcome. Anger can be very precise. Anger can be collaborative. We start to group together, to gang up on someone, to bully someone, to pressure someone, or we radically change our lives. We sell our home, quit our job, we shut down our Facebook page, shut down our Instagram, and stop. Anger is just like our tools. Anger is essentially crying out, use a tool. Because anger is asking you to check your barriers. And the way to remove barriers is with a scalpel, a group of people, or a bulldozer. Are there small things that need to change in your relationship to create greater connection? Scalpel. Are there a variety of influences that seem to lead you down a wrong road? Collaboration from people and family who hold you accountable. And have you hung out in areas that have left you unfulfilled and deeply troubled? It's time for a bulldozer. Some of us need to radically change our worlds. Some of us need to collaborate with some people who are safe and beneficial. And some of us simply need to make honest, sincere, small changes, and we will create the connection we need. Anger, just like fear, motivates connection. What is inhibiting my ability to connect? That's what it is saying. What is standing in the way of the things I want to connect with? And if you have solutions to that, you can handle your anger. I want to be clear. I want to be clear about a couple of things that are really important in this situation. First of all, you may have tuned in tonight hoping to get tools to manage your anger. When I get upset, when I start getting angry, and so you want me to give you some cognitive behavioral therapy choices to help you manage your anger behavior. You want me to give you some dialectical behavior choices to help you manage once you're in the moment. That's not why I'm here tonight. That's for a therapist. What I'm here tonight to tell you is 2 things. To manage your anger better, to process your anger into an asset, you've got to begin dealing with it before you're in the moment. You know what's inhibiting you. You do. You do. The reason you fuss your wife out so much is because of how diminished you feel on the job. The reason you cuss your husband out so much is because you have not forgiven your mother for how she treated you. And when he says certain things, you get triggered. The truth is, what is really inhibiting you may be very old. Very old. And your anger is the steam from something long ago. Number one, you've got to process your emotional experience, and that will help you manage anger. And number two, spend time discovering what's important to you, because that will help you discover your barriers. And when you have an understanding of what your values are, you'll have an understanding of what your barriers are. And with that clarity, that awareness, you create change. I hope I have been helpful tonight. My goal was not to give you this huge, overlapping solution to all the things that anger you. The reason I can't do that is because everybody experiences life differently. And what inhibits one does not inhibit the other. So I'm not going to give you these precise scalpel tools, because if I talk to you about how to rearrange communication in your marriage, it may not apply to the guy trying to fix his relationship with his sister. But you both have barriers. You both have things you're not processing that's inhibiting the connection you want. If you want to solve what's causing the anger, discover what's holding you back. Anger is an asset because it's God's way of telling you, you have a barrier you're not dealing with. And I gave you anger to help you see the truth. Tonight, I want to use some text. The first text I want to show you is Ephesians. I believe it's Ephesians 4:26. Yes, be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath. Be angry and do not sin. So what is it saying? Check your barriers and don't let your frustration with your barriers lead you to a choice you will regret. Don't let the sun go down without you understanding your barriers. That's what the text is saying. Don't let the sun go down without you understanding what your barriers are. Because if you don't know what your barriers are, your emotional choosing can lead to regretful outcomes. Be angry and sin not. Be in clear awareness of what your barriers are, and you can avoid a regretful choice before the sun goes down. See it in the text now? See it in the text now? See it in the text now? I got another one, and this one was hard for me. It's in Matthew. Oh my goodness. I believe it's Matthew 5. Is it Matthew 5? Oh no. Matthew 5:21. I think I'm messing up. I probably need to get my Bible out. 5:21. So it's essentially Jesus having a conversation. And he says, you heard that murder was wrong. And that murder will put you in danger. But I tell you, someone angry is in danger of judgment. Whoa, that's suggesting that God believes anger is in danger of judgment. And I was like, wait. Am I understanding this correctly? And I had to look at it again. Then, of course, I had to do some consultation. Had to check. Whoa, wait. What I discovered here is the word judgment. You see, our lesson hasn't changed. If God gave us anger and he intends for us to live in the truth as a result of anger, discovering our barriers, when we don't do the work of discovery, we are in danger of judgment. Remember, the Bible is clear about one thing. God is in the truth. He only deals in the truth. And if you're not in the truth, you're not in the voice of God. So if your anger has taught you what your barriers are and you choose not to process them, you're in danger of judgment because what's inhibiting you has been brought to your attention and you're choosing not to deal with it. Whoever is angry and is not processing it is in danger of judgment. In the Bible, there is a story of Jesus revealing anger to us. It's him cleansing the temple. It's in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's in all four Gospels. But what's interesting is that in John, we discover that he does it twice. In John, we discover the first time he does it. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it's the second time he does it. In John, it's the first one. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it's the second one. Notice the display of anger at the beginning of his ministry. Notice the display of anger at the end of his ministry. If you look carefully, he cleanses the temple just before being crucified. And he cleanses the temple just as he starts his ministry. So he gets angry, and we see it when his ministry gets started, and he gets angry when his ministry is ending. Notice the timing. Does God do anything unintentional? Never. So when his ministry gets started, what is inhibiting people from receiving God is the first display of anger. And the last, what is inhibiting people being ready for the sacrifice of God? It didn't change. When he started his ministry, the temple was filled with barriers. And if you read the Gospels, you will discover he regularly hung out in the temple. And if he was going to be there, the barriers had to go. They had to go. If he was going to hang out in the temple, the barriers had to go. And at the end of his ministry, notice when he died on the cross, there was a separation between the holy and the most holy, and it ripped. It ripped. It ripped. There was no separation now. So just before he gave his ultimate sacrifice, the barriers to meeting God in the ultimate offering had to be removed. He had to cleanse the temple again because the ultimate sacrifice was coming and there could not be any barriers. Be angry and sin not. We know this is true because Jesus went into the temple and cleansed the barriers. His life is an example for us. And if there's anything you want to clear barriers from first, it's your relationship with God and your relationship with others. Notice the first time he cleansed the temple, he told them, get out of here. My house was meant to be a house of prayer. The second time he cleansed the temple, He said, my house was meant to be a house of prayer. What is prayer? Communication to God. The only thing essential in relationships, communication. If you cannot communicate through physical touch and words and acts of service and gifts and being present, your relationship is not growing. God communicated in his act of anger. I will remove the barriers and open the door for communication. So, whatever is generating anger in you, dissect what the barriers are and talk about it. Talk about it. Guys, that's all I have. And I hope it's been helpful. I hope that you understand even anger is an asset. Even anger is divine. Are there questions? If you have some questions, I'd love to answer them. You know I am passionate about questions. If you have any, I'd be glad to help. If not, we can discover a couple of things that will be beneficial for us going forward. Our first installment was fear. And we discovered the benefit of fear. Our second installment was anger. And I hope tonight you have seen its benefit. Our third installment will be another one very challenging. Shame. And believe it or not, shame is an asset. I challenge you because I can show you in the Bible that essential Bible characters experienced all of the installments we will discuss. I can show you Bible characters that experienced fear. I can show you Bible characters that experienced anger. And I can show you Bible characters that experienced shame. And all of these individuals, still Bible heroes. There were times Abraham was afraid. Did you know that? He was. You know when Abraham was afraid? When he went to Egypt and they saw how beautiful his wife was. And he said, tell him you're my sister. Tell him you're my sister. Fear. Fear. You know, when he encountered fear, what did he do? Sought connection. That's all there is to it. He sought connection. He sought connection. He wanted to connect in order to process his fear. There were times that David was angry, furious, so furious, it was evident by his choices. And what did he do? He processed his need for connection as well. I'll give you an example. David becomes king. David becomes king, and after being crowned king, some young man comes into the court and says, I got stuff from Saul's death to prove he's dead. You want it? David immediately gets upset. Immediately gets upset. And takes out punishment on this individual. So what are we saying here? You and I can easily experience an emotional moment of fear and anger. And just like David, he discovered long before he became king that it was God putting him there. And not only was it God putting him on the throne, but that God had put Saul, the king before him, on the throne. And so when someone brought in tools to prove Saul's death and profit from him, the first thing David recognized was, you will not during my reign diminish the callings of God. I won't be a part of that. I know God put Saul on the throne, and I had nothing to do with it, and I will have nothing to do with his debasement. Because he processed who was putting him on the throne long before he got there, he could be angry and sin not. We will deal with shame in our third installment. And I promise you, there are Bible heroes who experienced it, and they got through it. You and I experience it, and we can get through it through connection. What brought you into this world is relationship. What will sustain you in this world is relationship. Do we have any questions? I believe we're all set for tonight. I am deeply, guys, grateful for your participation. I am deeply grateful that you were willing to watch tonight. I am deeply grateful for those who will watch later. And I hope that I have been a help to you. I hope. I cannot let this moment without giving great thanks for the people that are behind the scenes making this possible. I told you in my first night, this is way beyond my comfort zone, and my friends are holding me accountable to grow. And so I thank them and I appreciate them. I'm being told there's a question. Okay, we want to knock out a question before we go? Let's do that. Question is, how do you handle being angry at yourself? Great question. So let's go back to the top of our presentation, deep inside my story. If you listened carefully to my story, who was I angry at? I claimed to be angry at God. I claimed to be frustrated with what God was doing. But what I was really upset at is me and where I was. I was holding God responsible for it, but I knew it was my choices that got me there. So I was angry with myself. I was frustrated with myself. And until I took time to understand what was inhibiting me from getting the things I needed, I couldn't deal with my anger with myself. The barriers for me, the barriers that generated anger in me was what was inhibiting my path to purpose and fulfillment. When I started to face what it was I truly wanted, purpose, fulfillment, then my barriers became clear. Once I had clarity on what my barriers were, I had to take steps to remove them. How do you handle being angry with yourself? What is it that you want? And what's standing in the way of it? Great question. I am grateful for the questions. I do want to share something with you. Keep in mind that when sharing the link for these broadcasts, it might be easier to share the link from YouTube. Everybody doesn't have Facebook. Remember, our first installment was me first getting on Facebook. So be mindful of the fact that YouTube might be more helpful. Next question. How do you cope with being forced to interact with someone who has wronged you without letting anger consume you? Okay, I'm going to read that again. How do you cope with being forced to interact with someone who has wronged you without letting anger consume you? So I love this question because you are really asking about social interaction. Your friends will wrong you, your family will wrong you, strangers will wrong you, coworkers will wrong you, all kinds of people will wrong you. So, really, oddly enough, the answer doesn't change. What is it that you really want? And how did this person's choices inhibit that? Remember, if you are clear on where you're headed, the barriers become clear. So, this is what's interesting about someone wronging you. Did they actually inhibit where you're headed? Or did your reaction inhibit where you're headed? You see, being wronged is perception. If someone has done something legitimately inappropriate in reference to you, how does it impact where you're going? If you are clear about where you're going, you have clarity about how to deal with the barrier. Whatever wronged was done to you, the way you process that is interacting with that person with the mindset of, you will not inhibit where I'm going. So, for example, let's keep it real. For example, you're on a job. You're both headed for a promotion. You're both wanting the same promotion. You have worked hard. You have no idea how well the other person has worked hard. In the process of getting the promotion, being evaluated for the promotion, you discover that the other person has done something shady in reference to you. What is it that you want? Do you want the promotion? Or do you want to grow professionally? And the promotion is a tool for your professional growth. If their shady activity kept you from getting the promotion, what you want has not been inhibited. Because remember, if your want is professional growth, there are other ways to grow. And here is something delightfully tasty. The Bible says, revenge is mine, saith the Lord. So if in fact their shady dealings are viewed by God as inhibiting what he has for you,
Come on now.
I would hate to be them. Because God cannot be stopped. So if God has decided what is for you, you shall have, there is nothing that can stand in the way of it. Shady dealings or not. Remember, determine what it is you want. Determine where it is you want to go. And then the barriers become clear. Professional growth can happen a variety of ways. The promotion is not the only way. And if it is the best way, no good thing will he withhold from you. Well, are we good on questions, guys? I believe we are. I've enjoyed having the opportunity to share with you tonight. I hope you've enjoyed it. I appreciate the questions, and I hope you got answers that were helpful to your questions. I look forward to seeing you again when we do another At the Table. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to close with prayer and say goodnight. The reason I'm ending with prayer tonight instead of beginning with prayer tonight is simple. I had frustration about some of the things I've been praying for, and I had to remind myself what the barriers were so that when I pray tonight, I will talk about dealing with the barriers. Let's bow our heads. Father in heaven, we are grateful for anger because it's you telling us to look clearly on what's inhibiting us. And once we have clarity, we develop awareness, and awareness is the path to change. And that's something you have wanted for all of us, because you promised that the corruptible will one day put on the incorruptible. You promised us change, and so we look forward to it. Last week, Lord, we prayed for those dealing with health challenges. I called the name of Suzanne Mundy, and the healing for her is taking a long time. And I got frustrated because she matters to me. And you told me, Sheldon, what are the barriers here? My ability to connect with her. Her illness is preventing us from connecting. And you said, Sheldon, the only thing preventing you from connecting is the decisions you're making about connecting. Thank you for the lesson. Thank you for the lesson. Thank you for teaching us. If we get clarity, our decisions get better. We give you thanks for the healing in progress. We give you thanks for the healing extended thus far to Annie's father. And we let them represent all those who are struggling with their well-being. And we give you thanks that you have imparted clarity on how our well-being is in progress. Thank you, Lord, for what you are doing. Thank you for our emotions, for they enrich our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. Good night, folks. It's been a privilege.